The TV had been blinking for weeks. A soft, rhythmic flicker, like it couldn't decide whether to stay alive or finally give up. I was kneeling on the floor again, tangled in wires and dust, muttering to myself while the evening light slipped through the blinds. The living room smelled faintly of burnt plastic and cheap air freshener. "Noah, hand me the screwdriver," I said without looking up. He didn't answer right away. Just that quiet sound, fabric brushing against fabric, like he'd shifted on the couch. When I finally turned, he was watching me. Not the TV. Not the mess of cables. Me. "What?" I asked, trying to laugh it off. He blinked, shook his head, and mumbled, "Nothing. Just, you're really trying to fix it yourself." "Someone has to." I forced a smile, going back to the screen. "It's not like your dad's going to get around to it." That made the silence thicker. It's strange how silence can have a texture. Noah wasn't my son. He was my husband's from his first marriage. 26, quiet, polite, the kind of young man who said thank you too often. He'd moved back in for a few months after losing his job. And somehow, over those months, the house had changed. It wasn't the rooms, it was the way they sounded. How footsteps echoed differently. How two people could sit in the same space, not speaking, and feel everything shift just a little more each day. I told myself it was loneliness, or boredom, or just the echo of an empty marriage. But sometimes, when Noah would walk into the kitchen half asleep, the air would move, and I'd feel it. Like static. I hated noticing. And he hated pretending not to. That night, the TV finally gave up completely. Just a black mirror reflecting the two of us sitting there, pretending to be strangers. "I can order the part tomorrow," I said. "It's probably just the capacitor." He nodded. Then, softly, "You don't have to fix everything by yourself, you know." It wasn't about the TV. I think we both knew that. For a moment, neither of us moved. Just that hum from the old fridge in the kitchen, the ticking of the clock. Then, without a word, Noah got up and walked past me, close enough that his sleeve brushed my arm. Too close to ignore, too brief to justify. I stared at the dead screen, my reflection split in two by a crack of static light that flashed and disappeared. And in that second, I couldn't tell if what I felt was wrong, or just something I'd been waiting to feel for a very long time. The next morning, the house felt different. Quieter, somehow. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, the kind that sits heavy in the air, like a conversation that didn't finish. The TV still sat dead in the corner, its dark screen reflecting a crooked image of the window. Outside, the world was already bright, late summer light spilling across the unwatered lawn. I stood in the kitchen with my coffee going cold, listening to the faint creak of floorboards upstairs. Noah was awake. He'd been staying with us for 3 months now, long enough for his presence to blend into the house, but not long enough for me to stop noticing it. His room used to be a guest room, half forgotten, with mismatched furniture and a view of the neighbor's fence. Now it smelled faintly of aftershave and printer ink, filled with his notebooks and the quiet tapping of his laptop keys at night. He wrote articles, nothing steady, just freelancing, bits and pieces for small websites. I used to be a literature professor before I left the university. Some days, he'd ask for feedback on his drafts. Other days, he'd just hover nearby while I made tea, as if waiting for a reason to stay longer. I told myself it was nice, having someone to talk to again. But it wasn't always that simple. My husband, Mark, traveled often. He was gone again that week, somewhere in Denver for a business trip that had already been extended twice. We barely talked anymore, just short check-ins, like ticking a box. When he called that morning, I kept my voice light. "Yes, I'll get the TV fixed." "No, everything's fine. Noah's been helping." I didn't mention how his son had brushed against my arm last night. I didn't mention how I hadn't been able to sleep afterward, staring at the ceiling and replaying a moment that shouldn't have meant anything. After I hung up, Noah came downstairs, still half drowsy, wearing that same faded t-shirt from yesterday. "Coffee?" I asked, too quickly. "Sure." He rubbed the back of his neck, eyes on the floor. "About last night, the TV, I mean. I can help with the replacement part." His voice cracked just slightly, not enough for someone else to notice, but enough for me. I smiled, but something in me tightened. "That's kind of you, Noah. Really?" He nodded, took the mug from my hand, and our fingers brushed again. Just for a second. But it was enough to pull the air tight between us, that strange electricity that made even the smallest moments feel heavier than they should. Outside, a storm was starting to roll in. The light dimmed. And for the first time, I realized the real problem wasn't the broken TV. It was everything the silence between us had started to reveal. The rain started earlier than the forecast said it would. A heavy, steady sound, not dramatic, just endless. It filled every corner of the house, soft but constant, like background noise for a day that wasn't supposed to mean anything. By late afternoon, the sky had gone grey. The TV part still hadn't arrived, and Noah had taken it apart completely, the back panel resting on the rug beside a dozen scattered screws. "You really think you can fix it?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. He shrugged. "I like figuring things out. Besides, you hate calling repair guys." He wasn't wrong. I hated strangers in the house, the way they looked around like everything was broken, not just the thing they came to fix. I watched him for a while. The focus in his face, the way he bit the inside of his lip when the screwdriver slipped. It reminded me of his father years ago, back when Mark still tried to fix things himself instead of replacing them. Maybe that was what hurt the most. How easily Mark gave up on things. On us. Noah looked up suddenly. "You're thinking about him." The words caught me off guard. "Who?" He gave a small, knowing smile. "You only get that look when you're remembering something you don't want to." I laughed, too loud, too fast. "You notice too much." "Maybe." His voice softened. "Or maybe you don't hide it as well as you think." Something in my chest tightened, but before I could answer, my phone buzzed. "Mark." I stepped into the kitchen, letting the sound of the rain cover the conversation. He asked how things were. I said fine. I always said fine. He mentioned staying an extra few days. More meetings, more dinners. His voice sounded distant, rushed, like he was already halfway off the call before I'd even said goodbye. When I hung up, I realized Noah was standing in the doorway. "Everything okay?" he asked. "Of course." He didn't look convinced. There was a pause, long enough to feel it, short enough to pretend it didn't happen. "I can finish this tomorrow," he said finally, nodding toward the half-open TV. "No point pushing it tonight." I wanted to tell him to leave it, to sit down, to just talk, but the words stuck somewhere between my throat and my thoughts. Instead, I said, "Sure. Tomorrow." He gave a small nod, wiped his hands on a towel, and walked past me toward the hallway. As he did, I noticed a thin smear of black from the TV wiring on his palm. A mark he didn't notice. A mark I couldn't stop looking at. Outside, thunder rolled softly, not near, not far. Just close enough to remind me that something was coming. The storm didn't stop overnight. By morning, the gutters were overflowing, the yard a patchwork of puddles. The power flickered twice, and every lamp in the house hummed faintly, like the electricity itself was nervous. Noah was already downstairs when I came into the kitchen. The TV still lay open in pieces across the rug. He'd brewed coffee, strong and burnt, the kind that lingered bitter in the air. "You didn't sleep either," I said quietly. He glanced up, eyes tired but steady. "Guess not." We stood there, the silence pressing against us again, the kind that filled the room even when no one was speaking. "I ordered the new capacitor," he said, holding up his phone. "Should arrive tomorrow." I nodded, taking a sip of coffee I didn't want. "Good. Maybe then this place will stop flickering like a haunted house." He smiled at that, small, reluctant. But the smile didn't reach his eyes. By noon, the wind had picked up. Mark still hadn't called back, though I'd left a message hours earlier. The kind that sounded casual but wasn't. I found myself pacing, back and forth, from the window to the counter, as if movement could quiet the noise in my head. When Noah finally spoke, it startled me. "You ever think about leaving?" The question hung there. "Leaving what?" I asked. He shrugged, pretending it didn't matter. "The house. The routine. All of it." "Sometimes," I said. "But it's not that simple." "Maybe it is," he said softly. "You just have to decide which part of your life is worth fixing." His words hit harder than they should have. I turned to face him, and for a second, the distance between us felt smaller than the room itself. The storm outside cracked, a flash, a roar, and the power blinked off completely. Everything went dark. The only sound was rain hammering the windows and the ticking of the cooling metal inside the broken TV. "Noah," I whispered, not even sure why. "I'm right here," he said. And he was. Too close. Too still. The lightning flashed again, showing his face, the same quiet focus, the same look that had followed me for days, maybe longer. Then, from the table, my phone lit up, Mark's name across the screen. The sound broke whatever moment had been building. I stepped back, pulse loud in my ears. "Yeah," he said quickly, turning away. "You should." I reached for the phone, but my hand was shaking. The call ended before I touched it. Missed. And in the sudden quiet that followed, I realized I didn't know what scared me more, that Mark had called, or that for one split second, I hadn't wanted to answer. The storm finally stopped sometime before dawn, leaving the world damp and colorless. I barely slept. Every sound, dripping gutters, creaking floors, felt like a thought I couldn't turn off. When I came downstairs, the first thing I noticed was the smell of coffee again. The second was my phone on the table, screen lit, one unread voicemail. From Mark. I hesitated, thumb hovering. The message had come in after midnight. Noah was sitting by the unplugged TV again, sorting screws into neat piles. His hair was still damp from a shower, his expression unreadable. "You're up early," he said. I couldn't sleep. He nodded, not looking up. Neither could I. The quiet stretched. I turned away, pressed play on the voicemail. "Hey, Elena. Just calling to check in. I know it's late. Listen, there's something I need to tell you when I get back. Don't worry, it's nothing bad, well, we'll talk in person. All right. Take care." He sounded strange. Careful. Like every word had been rehearsed. Something inside me sank. Noah spoke from behind me. "Is everything okay?" "Your dad said he needs to talk to me," I said, forcing calm. He didn't say why. Noah's jaw tightened. He's probably just being dramatic. "I don't think so." There was a pause. Then Noah said quietly, "He called me, too." I turned. "What?" "Last night. Around 11. Said he wanted to clear the air." I didn't know what he meant. He sounded off. The words hung between us like static. "What did you say to him?" I asked. "Nothing, really. I said I'd talk when he got back." We stood there, both processing what that could mean. A part of me wanted to ask more, but something in his expression stopped me. There was something he wasn't saying. Around noon, the power flickered back on. The TV made a soft pop as the screen came to life, half assembled, its reflection warped and ghostly. And then, almost absurdly, a video feed appeared. The home screen of our streaming account. Except, someone was logged in. Not me. Not Noah. A new profile, M. I stared at it, a strange chill running through me. "Noah," I said. "Did you make that?" He frowned. "No. Why?" I clicked the profile before he could stop me. It opened to one saved video, a recording timestamped yesterday, 7:43 p.m. The title read, "Living Room, Camera Feed." My stomach dropped. Our house didn't have cameras. At least, none that I knew of. Noah leaned closer, whispering, "Wait, that's the same time we were fixing the TV." The screen glitched, then froze on an image, faint, blurred, but unmistakable. It was us. In the living room. The same night. And in that instant, the quiet mystery of our house stopped feeling quiet at all. The room went so still I could hear the hum of the refrigerator through the walls. The video on the TV froze, colors washed out and flickering. Noah and I just stared, two reflections caught in the screen, overlapping with the faint image of us from the night before. "I don't understand," I said quietly. "How? Who recorded this?" Noah stepped closer, jaw tight. "It must be a glitch. Maybe your husband, maybe Mark set something up. He would have told me." Would he? That stopped me. The cursor blinked at the bottom of the screen, like the recording wanted to keep playing. I pressed play. For a moment, nothing. Just static. Then, faintly, the sound of my own voice. "Noah, hand me the screwdriver." The same scene. The same angle. But now I could see where the camera had to be, right above the bookshelf. Hidden in plain sight. My stomach turned. Noah ran a hand through his hair. He's been watching us. I don't know. I could barely speak. Maybe it's old, maybe, but then the timestamp shifted. 8:02 p.m. A new clip. It showed me standing by the TV, Noah behind me. The brief moment when our sleeves brushed. The one I hadn't been able to forget. And then, at the edge of the frame, a faint shadow by the hallway. Someone else in the house. I froze. Do you see that? Noah's face drained of color. That's, before he could finish, the front door opened. The sound was sudden, sharp. Footsteps. Mark. He was soaked from the rain, suitcase in hand, eyes fixed on the TV. What's going on here? He asked. His voice was calm in a way that didn't sound calm at all. I tried to speak, but he looked straight at Noah. I told you to stay out of it. Noah took a step back. You set this up? You were spying. Mark's jaw tightened. You think I don't know what's been happening in my own house? Lightning flashed again outside, lighting all three of us in harsh white for half a second. And then, in that thin, fragile silence after the thunder, something cracked open between them. Years of resentment, of unfinished sentences, of everything left unsaid. Noah, Mark said slowly, you're here because I wanted to see the truth. Now I have. But before anyone could move, the TV sparked. The screen glitched, flashing one last image before going black, a frozen frame of all three of us standing there, blurred together, like the house itself was trying to remember what happened. The smell of burnt plastic filled the air. And in that silence, I realized this wasn't about the TV anymore. It never was. It was about everything we'd let break before we ever tried to fix it. The house smelled faintly of smoke for days after the storm. Mark fixed the wiring, said it was just an electrical surge, but we all knew it wasn't the kind that could be repaired with tools. The TV stayed off. No one mentioned turning it back on. Mark didn't talk much that first night. He went straight to his office, leaving the door half shut like he didn't trust what might slip through the crack. I heard him on the phone later, low and deliberate, asking someone to remove a monitoring system. He said he'd installed it for security. That's what he called it, security. I didn't argue. I was too tired to untangle the truth from the excuses. Noah left the next morning. No confrontation, no long talk, just a quiet breakfast, the smell of coffee, and a few words that sat between us like small, fragile glass. I didn't know, he said. About the camera. About any of it. I know, I whispered. He hesitated, eyes soft but steady. For what it's worth. I meant what I said. You don't have to keep fixing everything. Then he picked up his bag and left before I could answer. Mark came into the kitchen a few minutes later, the sound of the car engine fading down the street. You didn't stop him? He asked. I shook my head. He needed to go. Mark nodded once, stiffly. Maybe that's best. He poured himself a cup of coffee and stood beside me, both of us staring at the silent TV. It reflected our shapes in the dark screen, two people still standing, still pretending the picture might return someday. After a while, he said quietly, I thought if I watched, I'd understand what went wrong. I looked at him, tired but calm. Did you? He exhaled. No, neither of us said anything else. There was nothing left that could be caught on camera. Weeks passed. The house slowly settled again. The rain stopped coming every afternoon, the air grew warm, and sunlight returned to the living room in soft, forgiving streaks. I never replaced the TV. Sometimes I just sat there, in the quiet, listening to the faint hum of the world outside. There was a strange comfort in the silence, not emptiness, but space. Space to breathe, to start over, to finally let something stay broken without rushing to fix it. And once in a while, when the light hit the screen just right, I could almost see us there, not caught, not recorded, just living, briefly, before everything changed.